Check testing 54321. Talking all things Atlanta United, Mouths of the South.
Check.
Post us to Facebook.
No, not yet. Check. Check 1, 2. Hello. All right. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Shall we get the show on the road? Oh, I gotta switch that.
Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Ain't nothing to it but to do it.
All right. Let's rock this joint.
Let's rock this joint.
Can you guys hear okay on the mic on the stream?
Let us know.
We're about to start here in a second. I just wanted to make sure it sounds okay on the mic. Awesome. Thank you, Clayton. All right.
Thank you, Chris.
Ready?
I'm ready, man. Let's go.
What's up, Atlanta? This is the Mouths of the South podcast brought to you by Dirty South Soccer in the palatial 6A The Fan studio. I am Eric Quintana. Next to me, Sam Franco, Josh Bagriansky, not in tonight. No talking tactics this week. We're going to try to do something on the weekend. But with the 2 weeks off for Atlanta United, we're going to come up with maybe a longer version of talking tactics. But I just wanted to update everyone on that because we obviously aren't going to have anything out this week. So let's all gather around. Group therapy time.
Yeah, Josh needed a little more time than we did, so that's why no talking tactics. He's going to come back, though, like you said, with a full breakdown of some things that have been happening and things that we're going to talk about on today's show, kind of like, maybe some things that we're seeing and some warning signs of potential things that could come.
He was too emotional to be on the show today.
That's right.
It was too much for him. The craziness that happened against the Philadelphia Union, and if you're not aware, Frank de Boer essentially changed formations like 3 different times. He pushed Michael Parkhurst to left back, which weird.
Okay.
At one point to start the second half, Rometty is at center back, and whatever that was, I'm pretty sure led to not even pretty sure it led to the goal. It's the reason that Atlanta United ended up coming away with the point as opposed to not giving up that goal and possibly coming away with 3 points. Who knows how the rest of the second half would have gone had Philadelphia not scored that early. But the focus, I think, on this show, at least to start, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the game, but now that we've had a couple of days to kind of process things and get over our emotions and initial reactions of what's to come, I think that it's time to focus on Frank de Boer. And I'll be honest, this is the title of this podcast is going to be something Frank de Boer-ish. Something. It's going to be a total ratings grab.
The clickbait. Yeah,
it's going to be clickbait. It's going to be clickbaity as hell because I think, even though I don't want to talk about it, even though I think it's too soon, it's got to be discussed.
Well, you're saying that you're gonna clickbait people into being like, oh man, are they going to go super hot takey on? Yeah, we got to fire Frank de Boer now, and it's going to be one of those where you get them in, and then they're going to be very disappointed when you and I are both like, everybody calm down. It's only been 3 games in the league. Let's just settle down, man.
A little bit, yeah. If I'm not look, I'll put it out there. I'm not full on fire Frank de Boer right now. I think it's incredibly too early.
Come talk to me in 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months, we can have a different discussion. But right now, just to get that out of the way and blow the tease, I think it's way too soon to have that discussion. Now, there's reasons to be upset as a fan. There's reasons to be concerned. But again, there's a lot of circumstances surrounding the games that Atlanta United have played so far. And that sounds like an excuse, and that's exactly what it is. But it's part of the context behind the struggles that Atlanta United has faced so far to start the season.
Right.
I think that has to be discussed, as well as, okay, if things do go south from here, what does the timeline for Frank de Boer look like? I don't think it'll get there, but because I feel like a lot of people want to talk about it, let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's go ahead and talk about how long Frank DeBoer has should this not get any better. Let's go ahead and dive down that road. Let's go ahead and make that as clickbaity as possible, because a lot of people want to have that discussion. A lot of people want to have a discussion, and they want to know, what does that timeline look like? How long is the Frank DeBoer leash on the system, on the tactics, on the decisions made, in matches, the things he says after matches? What does that timeline look like?
Yeah, and look, he's got a year. I think we both agree on that. And I think from what I got from you doing the radio show earlier that we do every Wednesday, 7 to 8 on Atlanta Sports X.
If you're not joining us, you're not a true Mouthy.
Atlanta Sports, atlsportsx.com. You can tap the app. You can also listen in Atlanta on 106.3 FM and 12:30 AM. But I digress. I think the one thing that I got from you is that you're not really ready to make any sort of judgments.
No,
just because we haven't had enough time.
There hasn't been enough time. I know there's a lot of people, and by the way, Mourinho is available. I don't know who you actually are. I'm sure you're someone that listens regularly. He's got the title for the podcast. Let us be frank about DeBoer.
I like it. That's good.
Nice.
Let us be frank about DeBoer.
Well done. You've won the contest.
I was trying to think of like a headline for like putting us on like Facebook and putting our stream for this week up there, and I think I'm just going to steal that.
That's it. Yeah. No, seriously. Mourinho is available. I don't know who you are in real life. I'm just
going to put Sam and Eric are talking frankly about DeBoer.
There you go. That is that's the headline for this podcast. Well done. But in all honesty, you look at again, you got to look at the context behind a lot of this stuff. And again, I know it's going to be excuses. That's exactly what they're going to sound like. That's exactly what they are. But there are facts behind, again, the context of how Atlanta United is playing these games. First, we got to acknowledge that still brand new system, still brand new manager, only 2 months with the team. You can say the same about Pity Martinez. So you throw that in there. Top of the fact that it's been like 6 games in 17 days, that is hard for anyone, let alone with the travel and everything else. That is tough. You're playing two of the 3 teams you played in MLS have been major bunkering teams in FC Cincinnati and Philadelphia Union, and that doesn't play into the hands of Atlanta United. That's exactly the same. Those are the same issues. What we saw on Sunday and we saw against FC Cincinnati, they're the exact same issues we saw last year with Almiron against teams that bunkered. Because again, Almiron didn't have that freedom to move in the midfield like he does against a team that wants to open it up. Against a team like DC United, against a team like FC Cincinnati, against a team like Philadelphia Union that are fully content with parking the bus, that eliminated Miguel Almiron. And there was no solution to it, this past Sunday either. So let's keep that in mind, that this wasn't going to look better with Almiron in the lineup. I should say, in all likelihood, it wasn't going to look better with Almiron in the lineup because you didn't really have any chances to counter. And you could say the same thing about FC Cincinnati. Maybe DC United goes a little differently because they did look like they wanted to play a little more, but they've had our number since day one, and they forced everything out wide, forced crosses like you would not believe, and that's been how they've managed Atlanta United, again, since Atlanta United's inception. That's not a surprise. The surprise has been that we, in our 3rd year, we still can't manage to figure out how to beat that kind of a tactic.
Yeah, and I think, again, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in terms of like a timeline or in terms of like what Frank DeBoer has to do to get this turned around and to, keep security in his job. And when I say that, I'm not, again, jumping to any sort of conclusion that he needs to or should be fired. If you're hashtag DeBoer, like if you're throwing out hashtag DeBoer out right now, seriously, like doing it, you're not just doing it like as a joke, then I don't really think that anything we say or that anybody says is going to convince you otherwise, because you've convinced yourself of that after only 3 league games and some games. Look, Monterrey's the best team Atlanta United has ever played.
We should have, and I say we, and I point at myself. We should have tempered our expectations when it came to CCL.
I'm right there with you.
Herediano should have been a win at their place and at home. It obviously was at home. And again,
the 3-1 result down there is unacceptable. That should not have happened.
Underestimated their turf, how well they would play on their home turf. And then
it's still a bad performance.
Absolutely. And how unprepared I think Atlanta United was.
That was the main thing that caught me off guard, was that they looked unprepared against Herediano.
It still should have been better. But that being said, I think against Monterrey, we look. It looked good. Sorry, our chances. I'm not gonna say it. The play looked good, but the chances for us to possibly bring it home at 1-0 looked great up until the 75th minute, and then 79th minute goal, and you know the rest from there. But again, you're still facing one of the better teams in North America with essentially 3 weeks of practice, less than 2 months of a tactical system in play, missing a right back, Pity Martinez, who still hasn't acclimated himself to the team, to the conditions, to, if you believe Frank DeBoer, the turf, the travel, everything. Give it 3-4 months in, at the very least. Give it a string of MLS matches. Give it an international break where they're not, where they're all together. I'm not saying this international break they're together all together, but you get what I mean. Where they're more rested, where they have a chance to actually implement and practice things versus kind of throwing it out on the field and seeing what sticks for the moment. Because that's essentially, and Frank DeBoer said as much. Essentially, all we can do is play the game, rest, have a kind of a walkthrough, have a slow or a light training, and then we're playing another game. That's not conducive to a successful start to a season. That's not really Frank DeBoer's fault. It hasn't looked great under Frank DeBoer. I will happily admit that. It's not as exciting. It's not as attacking.
But it's not going to be.
Yeah, and you knew that going in.
Well,
you should have known that going in.
The thing is, it depends because, I think that, and I'll be the first to admit, because when Frank DeBoer first got hired and we did the first episode after that happened, I remember, at least, from my perspective and talking about total football and talking about what I thought we were going to see. And that was an error on my part because, I was thinking about it from the total football that we saw like a Johan Cruyff and those kind of people want to lay down. Whereas this version of it, if it even is more a Louis van Gaal, very pragmatic, very practical approach, very possession-dominated approach to where I think that it's not going to be a system where Atlanta United peppers the goal like they did under Tata Martino. They're going to be much more selective of their shots because Frank DeBoer doesn't want them taking bad shots. He wants them taking, well-worked opportunities and creating, quality over quantity is, I guess, the most simple way to put it.
Let me ask you a series of yes or no questions. Okay. Maybe it's just one question. I don't know yet. I just kind of thought of this.
Okay. Apparently, we have the deep voice thing back.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not going to start the podcast all over again. Sorry, but
it's only the recording mic for YouTube. It has nothing to do with our recording for the podcast. It's just weird.
So Almiron is a specific kind of player that in the midfield absolutely dominated and used his speed and deceptive strength to get the ball upfield. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He would not be a fit for this system.
Is Pity Martinez a player that can do that? Based on what you've seen so far, is Pity Martinez a player that can, again, receive the ball with his back to his opponents, turn, run the field as fast as he can, blown by defenders?
I'm not ready to make the judgment on yes or no yet. But based on what I've seen so far, that's not his game.
I'm a no because he doesn't have the speed.
That's what, yeah. He's
just based off that one.
In an ideal situation, he's more of a fit for Frank DeBoer's system than Miguel Almiron is because Miguel Almiron was often allowed to kind of operate with impunity in terms of where he went on the field. Tata Martino wasn't restricting where he went. It was more of a free-flowing kind of thing, whereas the system is much more regimented now. And Pity Martinez is probably a better player for a possession-oriented type system. But the problem right now is that, he hasn't had a full preseason of training. Okay. He sat out a lot.
So is Barco that player?
No.
Is Remedi that player?
I think I'm going to jump to where you're getting here. That player's not on this team.
Yeah, so that's not Nagby. That's not Joseph. That's not Tito.
I'm not ready to fully say it's not certain players yet because I think, Darlington Nagby was asked to do something in Tata Martino's system where he's playing a little further back. I think from what we've seen so far in the Boer system, the Boer's trying to push him up the field a little more. And I'm not quite ready to make a judgment. Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to see Nagby play up
Okay, but I'm not talking about up top. Further up the field. That's a different tactical.
But that's what.
But that's not what I'm referring to. Is the style of play in terms of taking the ball, countering up the field, or taking essentially blowing past defenders. Because again, Almiron's bag of tricks was, I'm going to receive the ball at the back to you. I'm going to turn. I'm going to get by you. I'm going to use my strength, my speed to facilitate to Joseph to get it on the wing, whatever. He dominated the midfield doing exactly that.
I mean, his speed was just so terrorizing.
There is no one on this team that does it like Miguel Almiron. So regardless of who the coach is, regardless if it's Tata Martino, Frank de Boer, Esqueloto, regardless of who it was, the system was going to have to change. You weren't going to play the same way because you don't have the speed in the midfield anymore.
Right, but Almiron wouldn't use it for this system either.
That's fine. What you do have is a possession-based players. They're good with the ball at their feet. They're quick. Maybe not top speed fast, but they're quick enough.
Have you noticed any indecision?
Sure, I've noticed indecision, but it's still early on. They're still learning this tactic. My point being is that this was not going to be the same Atlanta United, regardless of who the coach was, who the player personnel were. It wasn't going to be the same team as 2017, 2018. And we had to know that going in. I think a lot of us forgot that simplified how important Almiron was to this team, how he was to the process of Atlanta United getting forward, of his distribution, of his threat level in the midfield and all over the field.
Over the last month on form, he's been one of the best players in the EPL.
He's absolutely changed Newcastle. Absolutely, based off what he can do going forward, using his speed, using his deceptive strength, because again, he's a scrawny kid. I don't know where he gets it from, but he knows exactly how to use his body.
I think just the speed more than anything. He keeps defenders off balance.
Pity Martinez, Barco, anyone else you want to throw in there on this team, Nagby, Tito, they just can't do that. They have to slow the game down. The only way you can be successful going forward and slowing the game down is pretty much the way that Frank de Boer is doing it. Now, are there better ways to do what Frank de Boer wants to do? I think so. I think he's made some absolutely weird decisions. I think that if we're just referring to last match, pushing Michael Parker out to the left back, and at least to start the second half, dropping Remedi into a center back role. At least, again, more than anything, being more defensive against a team that hasn't been a threat going forward the entire first half made absolutely no sense to me.
The problem with that is where he sticks to one of the tenets of total football: players being amoebas. The ability to just kind of hit the reset button on a formation, but not change the lineup. And so that's why he's putting Parkhurst in that position, because he's like, oh, well, we're going to change the shape, but I'm not going to bring in any subs here. So what does he do? Like the 60th minute, he brings off Parkhurst because he realized that it wasn't working.
Yeah, and don't get it twisted.
That's the thing. It's like, it's the system that they're trying to run where, yeah, we want to have a lot of versatile players, but the problem with that right now is you don't have like Michael Parkhurst cannot play left back.
You are kidding yourself if you think that the Michael Parkhurst at left back thing worked.
No, it absolutely did not. And that's what I'm saying. Like, again, I love the idea of a free-flowing, everybody can play every position type thing. But if you're just going to sit there and be like, okay, we're going to change the shape, Michael, you move out to the left. Excuse me? Yeah, you're going to be our left back.
I hear that. I hear that. Parkey on the left wasn't terrible. No, and that eventually he was switched out. But my issue is that if he's going to get switched out that early, you might as well have put Breck Shea in at halftime to start the second half. That way, there's not this weird shift in momentum when it comes to – you're not going to go down the left side with Parker. You did it once, and it kind of worked once. But outside of that, you knew he wasn't a threat going on the left side.
Yeah, and again –
he's not solid for you there.
No, and I also think just in general, he is starting to look more his age than he did under Tata Martino. I don't know what what leads to that, other than the fact that he's gotten older, but he certainly has not looked as good in this system than he did, under Tata Martino, only going back to December and then November. I
don't know. It could be. I don't disagree with you that he hasn't looked his best. I also think that the constant shifting between center back and right back or whatever between him and Miles is not helping. Look, I think once Franco Escobar comes back, I think it's kind of clear I think Michael Parkhurst has to sit, at least for the time being.
He cleared Franco Escobar.
Yeah. By the way, medically cleared to play. That doesn't mean he's starting right away. That just means he's probably training. If all goes well over his next 2 weeks, maybe he's playing against Columbus.
He didn't make the Argentina squad, so he's got some time.
Yeah, we're good. But yeah, the decisions like that to take a guy like Parkhurst, start him on the left as a left back to start the second half, when if anything you were doing better than you have in most matches outside of the Edeliano match at home, there was the mindset, the approach was to go forward. Long diagonals over the top to Gressel, to Tito, to Joseph. You had moments where it looked like, okay, there's a solid plan to go forward here. It just slowed everything down, putting Parkhurst at left back to start the second half. It made absolutely no sense to me. And then again, to drop Remedi, it was unbelievably confusing what was going on. I remember looking around the press box, we're just like, is Remedi playing center back right now? And I think what was going on, he was a CDM, and he was being asked to, in those moments where they didn't have the ball and it looked like the Union were going on the attack, to drop between those two center backs. But again, that's not his bag of tricks. That's Lorenowitz.
These players do not, again, these players don't have the skill set to just magically jump to a different position and excel at that position. I totally agree. When I saw Remedi back there, it was just like, what in God's green earth is happening here? And I don't even like it when Lorenowitz is back there, and he's much better at it. So that's the thing. I don't want to see Lorenowitz back there. I want to see Remedi back there. The bottom line is, yes, you need to have versatile players, but you also need to have players that know how to play their positions. And you need to, that's where you build depth. That's where you get, guys that you're comfortable bringing off the bench. And I think right now, in terms of center, but when Franco Escobar comes back, in terms of center back, if you have Miles Robinson and LGP playing the way they've played, and LGP hasn't had the best start, but he's still proven to be a reliable, guy. So if you have Miles and say you go to a back four and you've got Shea, Miles, LGP, and Escobar across the back, and you've got an opportunity to bring Parkhurst in off the bench as a depth piece.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
You're deep back there. That's the thing. That does go to show you that one injury can really screw things up in terms of how you're, playing. So I do want to see how this team reacts when Franco Escobar comes back, because Franco was one of the hottest players in MLS the last month of the season, or last couple of months of the season last year. And I think that, you throw him back into the equation here, and this team is certainly going to start playing a lot better.
One of my bigger concerns is if the idea is to go to a four-man back line once Escobar, once you have a right back, I can't. It doesn't sit well with me, the idea of having Remedi when both backs, when the left back and the right back are pushed up. The idea of Remedi in between the center backs does not sit well with me, because it's not, again, it's not his role. That's, if anything, that's the Lorenowitz role. That's not a role that I would expect Remedi to be asked to play in. And those are what confuse me about Frank DeBoer. I get the idea of the tactics behind, especially when it comes to having lost Miguel Almiron. I get why you'd want to slow down the pace a little bit, because you're not going to be able to keep up with that over the course of 34 matches in MLS.
Yeah, I think the thing about Remedi is he's not a CDM, he's not a CAM.
Oh, see, I think he is a CDM.
I think he's a CM. I don't think, the problem is the CDM, because that's what I think when you're talking about Jeff Lorenowitz. I feel like he's got more of an ability to kind of be a guy that can drop back and provide more cover in the defense, whereas I don't necessarily see that as much in Remedi. I do think he can be more of a ball winner in the middle of the field, but it's like I said on the radio show, I'll say it again here, for a possession-based offense, and you can go and look at all the great ones around the world, because there are plenty, but this team doesn't have that engine guy, because they have a PT and a Barco that seem to want to be, more involved in the attack, but they don't have the guy that can win the ball and turn attack, or turn, defending into attacking on a dime, and they don't have the guy that's going to make that pass from the kind of the middle of the field to that next level.
I just don't really want him dropping back. I want him in the midfield, creating turnovers. That's one thing Atlanta United didn't do much of, is especially in the first half. They didn't have that many turnovers in their attacking half. That to me is a problem. That to me means that as soon as you lose the ball, everyone's dropping back into their defensive half. And
you're not pressing.
Yeah, you're not pressing maybe as hard as you should be, and you're not trying to, I'll go back to something Tata Martino always said. You're not trying to create chaos. You're not trying to force mistakes. I would venture to guess that the goal Philadelphia, I would venture to say that the goal Philadelphia Union scored was a product of nothing happening in terms of pressing the player with the ball. And that to me, that was all on Remedi. That's why I didn't like the idea of him dropping back like that.
Would you say that?
And to me, it was clear, and this is why we're spending so much time on it. To me, it was clear that was the game plan, because the entire first half he spent the majority of his time ahead of Lorenowitz, trying to create, trying to facilitate. And Lorena was supposed to be that guy that dropped back. That didn't happen to start the second half. That confused the hell out of me.
Would you say that the team right now has too many, in terms of that midfield that we talk about and sort of the lack of depth they have there? Do you think they have too many guys that are doing the same things, or too many like-minded players? It seems to me like, Remedi and a Nagby are very similar in what they want to do. Barco and Pitti are also kind of similar in what they want to do. And all four of those players, I know that Pitti and Barco are pushed further forward, but in a sense, maybe not as much with Remedi, but it kind of feels like Nagby, Barco, and Pitti, while very different in, their possession on the ball and things like that, but it seems like they want to do kind of the same kind of stuff.
That I don't know. I think Pitti's just straight up confused.
Yeah,
I don't think he 100% knows what he's supposed to do.
It's hard to make these judgments right now, just because I think they're still learning so much, and they're trying to figure out what they want DeBoer, or what DeBoer wants them to do. And
the MLS teams that you've played so far have, for the most part, bunkered.
They haven't
forced you outside. They haven't given you anything in the midfield.
Not that Atlanta United would be able to take advantage of right now, anyway, because again, we that one kind of engine type guy just isn't around right now.
Yeah, but even still, against a bunkering defense, you think that you'd have some kind of, especially with a player like Pitti Martinez, with Barco, you'd think at some point you'd see some kind of a breakthrough. We just haven't seen that yet. We saw, again, we were certainly more attacking. I think the approach was more attacking against the Philadelphia Union on Sunday. It was less circulate the ball around. To me, it wasn't boring on Sunday. To me, it was slower, sure, but it wasn't boring. You're not going to against teams that are going to bunker against Atlanta United. You're going to look exactly like you did last year against teams that bunkered against Atlanta United. That's not going to change.
I just think that with the teams that bunker, and Atlanta United haven't really ever been super effective against teams that like to bunker all that much. But I guess there's really two ways of approaching it. It's either, do you stay the course with what Frank DeBoer is doing in terms of being methodical, in terms of finding that extra pass, in terms of, waiting for the best opportunities, or at least the most I don't even want to say like the easiest opportunities. I mean, is that what they're trying to carve out, or at least the opportunities have the best chances of being goals?
Yeah, last year Tata Martino against bunkering teams always talked about wanting to create chaos in the box.
Any chances, because that's the thing. You never know when a keeper's going to make a mistake. You never know when a defender's going to make a mistake. It could be a foul in the box. It gives you a penalty. There's just so many things that could happen, whereas it seems like Frank DeBoer's mentality is, I don't care about any of those things that could happen. We want to make goals that do happen. And if somebody's asking me tactically what I favor, I'm way more in the camp of the first thing than the second thing. I'm way more in line with what Tata Martino said. Throw it into the mixer, creating chances. You never know when a deflection is going to happen. You never know when somebody's going to be out of position just for 1 second that gives you that chance to score. And right now, and you talk about things that could lead to an eventual ouster of a coach, being very stubborn in your system and your philosophy and stuff like that is all well and good unless you win. And if the board's going to be stubborn and continue to try to have this team, craft out these perfect goal scoring opportunities as opposed to, having to go every once in a while.
But you can still create chaos in a possession-based system.
I'm not saying you can't. They're just not right.
The problem is they're not passing fast enough.
Right. It's much more methodical, much more drawn out.
But the thing is, Tata Martino said the same thing about his team last year, is that they're not circulating the ball fast enough. They're not creating enough. They're not forcing movement out of last Sunday. In last Sunday's case, against they're not creating enough movement within the Philadelphia Union, the players. They're not drawing out specific players to open up space. That all happens. Even again, these are Tata Martino's words. These are all happens with quicker circulation, quicker passing. He threw in, because of the way that Atlanta United played, he threw in more cross in the box to create chaos. But the idea of passing faster, being more deliberate with your passing, is something that, for whatever reason, Atlanta United just haven't done. And maybe that's not something that's being essentially preached by Frank DeBoer, but that's the one way I can see that in the system against a bunkering team like Philadelphia Union. Don't kid yourself if you don't think you're going to see this again. That's how you can draw players out. That's how you can open up space, is by passing quicker, by being faster in your movements. We saw it against Monterrey. I don't know why that necessarily stopped against Philadelphia Union.
Well, it's almost like with Monterrey, it was like there was this level of pressure that was off of the team because they were down 3-0 on aggregate. It's like they went out there and sort of, at least from what I saw, kind of reverted back to maybe, hey, we're just going to play how we know how to play, and maybe not necessarily do the same kind of things, because they weren't as deliberate. They weren't as possession based necessarily against Monterrey, and give credit to Monterrey. They're not.
Oh no, they absolutely were possession based.
Well, I mean, they weren't as. Let me say they weren't as methodical in their possession. It seemed like they were a little bit more go for broke, a little bit more go to try to score. It just seemed the performance against Monterrey in the second leg seemed way more like the Atlanta United that we as fans have come to know than any of these other performances. I
think the last 15 minutes last 20 minutes of the Monterrey match at home is what it's supposed to look like when you're trying to go up tempo.
Yeah.
The way that the goal was scored for Joseph, the lead up, the chances beforehand, the chances after that, those were all based off of quick movements, quick passing in the final third.
The combination play.
Yeah, you just don't see that. You didn't see that against Philadelphia.
Well, that's been my biggest issue, other than in that time period you're talking about against Monterrey. Do you feel like with this team being possession-based, there just isn't that – there's not that combination play that you see from a lot of possession-based offenses, the 1-2s, you would think that Joseph and Barco, or Joseph and Pitti, and even Darlington Nagbe, and you look at the players out on the wings, with Julian Gressel pushing up. There's not the combination play. It's more just kind of dribble.
Everyone's looking for that through ball to Joseph, and that's not where you want to be.
Well, no, and that's also kind of the old mentality. It's like in the end, they're still trying to do kind of what they were doing last year and getting the ball to Joseph, but they're doing it in an entirely different way, and they're doing it to the point where I know Joseph has taken 10 shots in his first, in the first 3 games. But it almost seems like, when you're trying to force out these really good goal-scoring opportunities that DeBoer wants his team to have, it seems like Joseph's almost kind of starting to force some stuff, just because, like that bicycle kick, for example. I mean, it's almost like he's just like, well, I've got to do something here because we're not really doing a whole lot. And when I get the ball, I need to go ahead and try and shoot because I don't know when I'm going to get it again.
Going back to the context a little bit, I think, again, we just have to understand that at least early on, the situation hasn't been ideal for Atlanta United. Ooh, sorry, had a burp. It just wasn't ideal for Atlanta United in the short time it took to leading up to CCL, considering how in season everyone else was.
Yeah, we overblew like our expectations in terms of the ability to juggle all of these things early on. Oh, by the way, while breaking in a new manager, and oh, by the way, not having Miguel Almiron anymore and trying to get Pitti Martinez up to speed. Yeah, I think we might have been a little, at least, I'll say for myself, a little braggadocious and a little cocky in terms of what we thought Atlanta United could do.
In terms of the whole fire DeBoer aspect of the fan base right now,
joke,
I just
really think that, right?
See, I don't think it's a joke. I just think it's overblown a little bit. I think the context behind how people are watching these matches is being overlooked. That's my issues. Again, you played 6 matches. I think it's 6 matches in 17 days, something like that. That's Frank DeBoer was talking about a match every 3 days.
He's never had a start to the season like that. And that's where this is the most weird, because you don't usually jump into your first few games as a coach and have such important games right off the bat that you kind of have to win.
I'm not ready to pull the trigger on Frank DeBoer. That's not yet, at least.
There's only been 3 league games.
And I think everyone that's asking for that to happen.
What's the alternative right now?
You're really that's the other thing about it. It's like there's no
We'll throw the hypothetical out there. Like, if they were to fire Frank DeBoer tomorrow, who are they hiring? Like, who's ready to just jump in and take this team over right now? They're going to go out and get Jason Kreis? You know what I mean? Like, there's not these coaches that are just, oh, you know what? I'm a really good manager that's just not doing anything right now. I mean, I know it happened with Tata Martino, but, you know, lightning doesn't strike twice, man.
I know that many of the fans don't think that Frank DeBoer is the smartest person in the world right now. I just think you got to understand that him signing with Atlanta United came with some kind of stipulation that with the understanding between him and Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra that there is a set time for the system to kind of develop. He's always mentioned 6 months. No, the two teams he coached at beforehand didn't give him 6 months. You got to think that going into the negotiations to coach Atlanta United, that was a major talking point in the negotiations, that it's going to take a little bit. It's not going to happen right away.
You gotta be patient.
There are going to be struggles. I need time to develop this. You're losing a major cog from last year's team. You're introducing a new weapon, and it's going to take time. I know no one wants to hear that, but that's what we've got here. And on top of that, I don't forget if I said it on the podcast yet or on the radio show, but you got to understand that Darren Eales is not a guy that's going to really cave to the demands of the fan base.
Nor should he.
He's not going to make rash decisions. This would be a rash decision.
Oh yeah.
Firing him before the All-Star break would be an absolutely rash decision, because we've seen time and time again teams have horrible first halves of the season and find a way to make the playoffs, find a way to make MLS Cup, or at least make a deep run in MLS Cup. That happens almost every year at this point.
When was the last time you saw Atlanta United make a rash decision? Like, in terms of anything that a front office person would do.
I mean, we're obviously in the front office, but from what we can see,
the next time would be the first time.
Yeah,
at least from our perspective.
From what we can tell, based off watching the team from afar, is that they haven't made.
That's what I'm saying. And just rash decisions, or decisions that seem to be like a reaction to backlash or whatever. That's not what this organization does. And so I think that, there's going to be time. It's funny. Somebody on our YouTube comments goes, Wenger in. Well,
yeah, no thanks.
I'll just say this. If you don't like what you're seeing from Atlanta United right now, it ain't going to get any better if you hire Arsene Wenger, because he wants to pass the ball into the net too. So
look, the way that I envisioned the way they envision Atlanta United playing in this new system is the same way I envisioned LA Galaxy playing. And if you watch LA Galaxy, I think it was Minnesota United they played. It was absolutely beautiful. I would encourage everyone to go watch LA Galaxy play from last weekend, because it looked. You want to talk about quick passing? You want to talk about moving out the field methodically and quick and have some kind of attacking play? That's exactly what they did. They would string 10 to 20 passes together, move up the field, pretty much the same way. It was a little different, but pretty much the same way that Frank DeBoer seemingly wants Atlanta United to do it, except it was a lot quicker. It was a lot more exciting. I think Atlanta United's going to get there. It just takes a little bit of time. I think that whatever LA Galaxy have already, it benefits them. Obviously, Zlatan helps, but the players they have, I think, want to play that quicker style of play. And I think Atlanta United are still figuring out exactly positionally what they're supposed to do, what exactly their roles are. The fact that, again, and I don't want to harp on this any more than saying this last thing. The fact that Remedi was in front of Lorenowitz the entire first half, and then for whatever reason is behind Lorenowitz to start the second half, means that there was some tactical there was some shift in the role that Remedi had in the first half and the role Remedi had to start the second half. And it's obvious because you pushed Parkhurst out wide. So
it was certainly weird. And that's the thing. I think if you talk about concerns that people have with Frank DeBoer, that's one of the ones that I look at right away is, it's a little bit substitution pattern, but it's also this, oh, well, I can just change the system and put this guy here, here, and here. You don't have the players with multi-dimensional skill sets enough to just move them from one position to the other. There are a few players that I think can do that kind of thing. Julian Gressel's a guy that's been pretty adaptable in terms of where you put him on the field. But yeah, I don't think moving Parkhurst out wide or dropping Remedi into the back line, those aren't just plug and play type things, because those aren't positions those guys are used to playing. So that's what concerns me a whole lot, and just in terms of some of the things we've seen from DeBoer. And is this just him trying to get guys comfortable playing other areas? Is it him just working through the kinks of having some injuries? I mean, what exactly is happening? Because more than anything, I probably don't. I'll just put it this way: Frank DeBoer's forgotten more about soccer than I've known, than any of us do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the system and things that he's brought over here will work for Atlanta United and will work in MLS. We don't know yet.
I'm not saying it will work. I absolutely want to give it more time to see if it does work. I still can't make a definitive. I still don't know for sure. You had Barco come in as kind of a super sub, and I thought he was a fantastic change of pace for the moment. I think the case
that header was brilliant.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the case for Tito is kind of over, guys. I know that a lot of you guys like Tito. I promise you I don't hate Tito.
He's a very good player, just not for what Atlanta United wants to do with Frank DeBoer.
And look, I would argue that maybe Frank DeBoer needs to institute some kind of system where a player like Tito would thrive, but the fact of the matter, he isn't good in tight spaces. Can he occasionally pull off a good move? Yeah, we saw it last year. LGP also scores goals sometimes. We've seen that too.
Honestly, you want to know?
It's not something that's. I'll say it again. It's not his bag of tricks. It's just something he can pull every now and then.
You want to know where I think he fits best in this system? As Joseph's backup.
Proven
striker, but that's the thing. I mean, he's not a guy like you said that works well in tight spaces, and it just seems like the way that they run the people that play out wide are going to be in a lot.
I think he's a great sub given the circumstances of the match. So if it's a wide open match, then yeah, he's going to be great. He's going to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
If again a team like Philadelphia Union who decides to park the bus, not a great fit. And look, that's just a reality of the situation. Again, I know I'm sure I can go pull up all the nice little techers he's had in the past, but again, we haven't seen that this year, and a number of minutes probably is an issue. But at some point, you got to prove that you belong in the starting 11. I'm not surprised that he hasn't done that yet. And again, I think that he's just a product of the situation of the match.
But look at the improvement he had under Tata Martino from year 1 to year 2. This is a part of being a manager. It's player development, and we saw that specifically with Tito from how bad he was in 1v1 situations in 2017 versus how much better he got in 1v1 situations in 2018. And I think a lot of that has to do with the training and the development under Tata Martino. Can Frank DeBoer develop players? I think that is another thing that we have, to question here, because he was at Ajax, and I'm not saying that, he didn't have anything to do with the development of all those good young players, but Ajax has one of the most famous academies in the world. I mean, it's right up there with Barcelona's in terms of world-renowned youth development academies. So I'm not saying the job was basically done for DeBoer, but it certainly helps when you have all of the best young Dutch talent at your disposal pretty much year in and year out.
I don't think it was – I think Tito was the player he is. And
you don't think he can get better?
I don't know that he can get better.
But he did get better under Tata.
He had a couple moments. He looked better.
You've gone back.
Because he did look better in 2018 than he did in 2017.
I'd say much better.
But were those was those one-offs, or were those his skill set has improved?
Well, it can't be one-off if there were more than one moment. I mean,
how many can we count that we can remember that were actual
1v1 situations?
Yes. I can think of maybe 2.
I can think of more than 2. It's not much more.
Is it 2 where he does some kind of skill move to get by a defender, and it's not just I'm going to hit the ball forward and run past him?
Okay, well then now it drops off a lot. But that's the thing. That's a skill move if you have that skill. If you're faster than everyone else and you can play it around them and just sprint past them.
I agree.
That's a skill move.
Where is that best implemented?
In a game that's wide open and not as bunkered. I agree with what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that it gets to a point where you can't be 100% tactics and 100% devoted to your formation, but you also can't be 100% reliant on just your players' talent. You know, it has to be this melding of it. And right now, just based on what I've seen, I think Frank de Boer is a man that is way more reliant on the tactical system and the approach to the game than he is on the players that are on the field.
No, I can agree with you there because
and Tata seemed much different than that. He seemed much more like, I'm going to look at every single player's skill and then develop our system the way we play based off of that, as opposed to Frank de Boer being like, I have this system. We're not straying from this.
Okay, so let's assume we change the system.
I'm not saying change the system.
No, but let's go down that road just a little bit, because that's what everyone's calling for. This is all about the clickbaity of nature of the podcast. Let's go down this road. Let's say we change the system, and are we talking about changing it to what Tata Martino had last year?
No, because you don't have Miguel Almiron.
Okay, so then what are we talking about changing it to?
I don't necessarily.
If you can kind of take the poll, if you're on the YouTube feed, tell us if
exact formation like what you would play.
Just style of play more than anything. Because right now what we have is, again, very slow, methodical, very precise, not wasting chances. If it's not a solid, gonna be a shot on goal type of chance, we're not gonna play it. We're gonna pull it back and circulate. If you're on the YouTube feed, send us what you think the ideal situation for this team is right now, given the players. Because here's the thing: I don't know that there's a system that this team, given the players it has, there's not a different system that Atlanta United can utilize right now that automatically changes how effective this team is.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's that.
It's still going to take a few. It's still going to take a minute to
snap your finger and we can fix this type thing. No chance. Because again, the best player in your franchise's history, and Miguel Almiron, I know he only played in MLS for 2 seasons. Just in terms of a player that's been in this league, he may be one of the best players to have ever played in MLS. I don't even know if it's May. I think he is, because we haven't seen any players go for, the amount of money he went for to the top league in the world in terms of the money they spend. I mean, that's what Atlanta United lost. So, of course, things are going to be different. But I would favor a system and a philosophy where roles are more rigidly defined, because, again, these players, this is MLS, this is not Europe, where I think players are from an earlier age trained better and are more, ambidextrous is the wrong word, but just in terms of an ability to do more than one thing, and the technical ability of players in Europe is better from a younger age, so they can kind of do more things and play more roles. The players that he has right now, I just don't think he can be as
loosey-goosey, I guess.
Well, he can't be as utopian in his way of thinking. Like, okay, I've got these bodies here, and they'll be fine if I just tweak them to where maybe I'm pushing this guy a little bit more forward. Maybe this guy has more defensive responsibility. Maybe this guy is gonna do some overlaps or things like that. He just doesn't have players that have that skill. He doesn't have enough players that can do all of these things that he wants them to do. He's thinking too much in terms of like what he wants it to be, as opposed to the reality of the situation and what Atlanta United can be right now.
Okay, so what are we looking at? What's it? 5 weeks into the season?
Yeah.
Is it even that? I don't even think it's that. But whatever, you get what I mean. What's the ideal? There's no Frank de Boer. Let's say he got fired, and we're at the Atlanta United fan base has come together, and we formed one brain, and now we're in charge of the team. Let's go that route.
Yeah.
So what do we do with the team?
Well, Chris makes a great point in the YouTube comments. He's just putting players in the positions that excel.
But I want specific, because everyone keeps saying, and this is, I'm trying to make a point with this.
So you want, where do the players need to be exactly?
I need specifics.
Okay.
What are we looking at in terms of the attack, in terms of the midfield? What are we looking
at with Escobar back?
Sure.
Okay.
No, let's not because he hasn't come back yet. So let's wait to see.
Okay.
Because that's a major aspect of this.
That's true.
So I see 3-5-2. Okay, so what changes? What exactly changes with what we've got now What moves?
I don't think you can make the changes until Escobar comes
because
back.
What you're talking about. Okay, well, let's pretend Escobar's back then. Fine. Then we're essentially moving Barco into the midfield, right? Because I assume Pity.
I'm probably going 4-3-3.
But let's stick with a 3-5-2 for now. Pity and Joseph are up top, right?
Yeah, I guess you've got Pity tucked in a little bit, and then Joseph. Yeah, okay.
You've got Barco presumably in the center of that 5-man midfield.
So then who you play? You playing Shea and Gressel as your right wing back and left wing back.
And then you've got Lorenowitz and Remedi tucked back. Or Nagby, yeah, whatever.
And then you'd have, I guess, Parkey, LGP.
Sure, yeah. That I'm not less worried about because that's more, yeah. Miles. So what we're talking about is Nagby and Barco essentially playing a little bit higher in that midfield. You've got the one CDM. Even that doesn't look that much different than what we got now. And you're still facing the same issues where in the midfield, you've got a million bodies that you've got to navigate through. And Barco hasn't proven that he can do that. Nagby sort of has done that. Pity and Joseph are still – Pity's still yet to prove to me that he can come back to the ball, turn, and do anything effectively.
I think he needs to be more central.
Joseph isn't that guy to do that.
No.
He more often than not, when he receives the ball with his back to an opponent, he's playing it back to someone else and then making some other kind of a run. Which again, that is something I don't think we've seen enough of. But that it requires a lot more work out of Joseph and him dropping back and moving from that central that high position that we all want him to be in order to receive those final balls.
Here's another issue though: most possession teams that are really want to possess and play this style and have the ball as much as they can. A lot of these teams go attack through the center way more than they do out wide.
Mm-hmm.
And
everything's for Atlanta has been forced out wide.
That's what I'm saying. Like for the system, I think to work to its best, you have players, and that's why I think Pity ultimately is better in a more central role because if you're going to be playing through the middle like that, and you want a player that's good in tight spaces, well, you're going to have seemingly more tight spaces in the middle of the field than you will out wide.
But more often than not, Pity has been given the freedom to kind of roam around up top. He's mainly, he drifts out wide, but he's mainly tried to be central. And even then, it hasn't looked great for Pity. And again, I think it's still a matter of adjustment, a matter of figuring out the specific roles. But again, when you watch the player on the field, his skill set, and I'm not saying he doesn't have it, but he just hasn't figured out how to, I guess, do it yet.
Yeah.
I don't think the formation or the system or the tactics. The one thing I will say is that if they moved quicker, that might make it much more difficult for
quicker passing
defenders. It makes it much more difficult for defenders to defend. You're also pulling players out of different spaces to open up other spaces for Atlanta United players. But the formation, the system, I don't think that automatically solves all of the attacking problems that Atlanta United has.
Of course not. But I do think there's some things that they can do, that seem simple to say, might be a little harder in practice. But just right off the top of my head, again, more opportunities, getting Joseph more opportunities and not being a selective opportunities. That's one. I know that sounded like three, but it's one. Two would be to just have more strictly defined roles and to not necessarily have players playing out of position as much as we've seen so far. And then the other one is just, be a team that passes the ball a little bit more quickly and goes about their business a little bit more quickly, because this is a team that has a lot of very fast players and it has speed and has, an ability to get behind the defense, so to speak.
It sounds very simplistic and almost elementary to say, play the ball quicker.
But that's what I'm saying. It sounds like that, but
I think more than anything is don't be afraid to turn the ball over.
Well, that's what it is.
Take risk. Take some kind of chance.
There's a lot of tentative play. There's a lot of hesitation, because I think one thing in training, and it's probably been the thing that he's preached harder than anything to these players, is possess.
Yeah.
Don't give up the ball. And if you're telling them not to do that, then they're not going to take as many chances. Yeah. And some of the things we saw from Atlanta United, here's the thing. Somebody, VM Haircut on our YouTube comments. Would an Almiron suffer in a Frank system? Yes, absolutely yes, because that's not his game at all. He's a combination player. You get him the ball, a lot of 1-2s, a lot of relying on his speed, and he would very much suffer in this system because he's a player that wants to move fast and that wants to be erratic and cause chaos, like you said, that phrase there of causing chaos. And so while I think Almiron is a good enough player to excel in a lot of systems, I also give a lot of credit to Tata Martino and now Rafa Benitez for knowing what to do with that type.
I would say if we were having the same issues we were having the same sort of issues tactically and the lack of chances that have been created, the lack of movement going forward with Almiron in the lineup, I would be more concerned than I am now. Because
with Almiron in the lineup.
With Almiron now, because then that would mean to me that Frank de Boer is truly trying to fit the players to the system.
Married to the system.
I still don't think that that's exactly the case right now. I still think that the players are good for the system that Frank de Boer wants to utilize. I just think it has taken longer than they'd like for everything to come to fruition.
If they were playing like this with Miggy in the team, I'd be
It's
panicking.
a complete different story.
I'd be panicking. No, I'd absolutely be panicking because I would totally agree because I just don't think that he's a fit for the system. And I do think, at least more so than you, I think right now that Frank is a married to the system kind of guy. And if the system works, it's great. But if it doesn't, and we don't start to see some results here pretty soon, yeah, it's only going to get worse in terms of the fan reaction and the we'll probably hear a lot more boos at Mercedes.
I don't, and we're saying this, but we don't blame you guys for being upset. I mean, you want to see LA United succeed.
I'm upset. Shoot, after the game on Sunday, I'm sure you were the same way. After the game on Sunday, I'm sitting there like, did that really just happen?
I did think it was progress.
Well, no, they played a little better.
There was clearly a different mentality. It was, again, I think I've already said this before, but it was less circulation and more, all right, let's get forward. For once, let's just get forward. It seemed like they were just, at least the players were just like, all right, we're done kind of passing the ball around all freaking game. Let's get forward. There is still cause for the concern. So we're not saying that, you guys are all dumb for freaking out. You absolutely aren't.
Eric's saying it.
I am willing to give it more time. I'm concerned, but I also understand that the context. I'm not saying you guys don't understand the context, but I'm giving that more weight than I think many others are giving it. I'm willing to play the long game. I'm willing to be patient and wait to see how this all pans out. Because again, even he said it himself that this system takes 6 months or so to implement. He hasn't had Franco Escobar. I would just plead that there be patience.
But is it even about patience? Because you can be mad or you can feel however you want as a fan. I think Eric and I both said this. We're just going to tell you how it is. He's getting the year.
I think he's getting the year.
He's getting the year. So
there are people that I talk to that don't think so. I think he's still getting the year.
I think he's getting the year. And that's the thing. If he doesn't, I'd be surprised. But the way I feel right now and the way that I've seen this team conduct their business, he's going to get the year. And so there's no, you can be mad about how the team plays, but speculating about his future or whatever, or saying hashtag DeBoer out, there's no reason to do that because it's not, your hashtag DeBoer out, guess what that's not going to do? It's not going to make the team fire him. They're not, University of Tennessee football where they fire a coach before hiring him because the fans were like, no, we don't want you to hire that coach. Guess who's not doing that? Atlanta United. They're not going to react to, a few tweets or whatever about a coach. And I will agree. So, this is an interesting one too. Andrew checking in here on the YouTube comments. Why doesn't DeBoer stand with his fans? Feels like he doesn't care. You're right. He doesn't care. I don't think he gives one iota. I'm sure that he knows.
He wants everyone to enjoy the game. He wants everyone to be happy that they won. He does
not care what Joe Schmo in Section 130 thinks about him. He doesn't care, about the public backlash, Twitter, whatever, because he feels he was brought in here to do a job, and that's, remake this club into a different style and set themselves up for being a more possession style team. And Jenna here, you do a great point. He doesn't have to care. It's not required. I agree. It's not really his job to be this rah, I love all the fans, let's go out and grab a beer together after the game type guy. It's his job to come in here and win games ultimately. And that hasn't been the case early on. Hopefully it becomes a case. But again, for this, the fan base, I agree with his kind of sentiments, or at least I agree with the idea of spoiled comments, because this team's fans have never lost You know what I mean? They're just not used to losing. So with the seasons having started the way that it has, this is really the first kind of time that Atlanta United fans have had to quote unquote panic. So I just think that it's something where there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be learning of the system, but at the same time, I just think that everybody that thinks that the way that the club has been with its fan base has been great. But I also think that in some aspects they may have. What's the word? Does this sound wrong to say they've gotten too friendly with the fan base?
No, in what way?
Well, I'm just saying because like the fact that we have people saying like, oh well, Frank DeBoer needs to be more like friendly with the fans and stuff. And look, this club has been very accessible to fans. They've done phenomenal work in all of these regards, and I'm thankful that they do. But at the same time, not all teams are like this, and some teams operate a little bit differently. And maybe, I'm not saying be icy towards your fan base or be cold to them or anything, but the reality of the situation is,
it's not really his personality. Tata Martino was
that's what I'm saying.
He's a very happy-go-lucky, he's going to joke with you kind of guy.
DeBoer's a pragmatic dude.
He is. Let's talk business.
By the book, exactly. He is efficiency. It's what can I do to make this run the most efficient way possible.
And let's be real. If Frank DeBoer, and I'm not disagreeing that maybe he could be a little friendlier. Sure, maybe. I'm not. That's not something I specifically am worried about. But let's just assume that he was a little more more engaging with the fan base right now. Do we really think that's a good idea? As angry as a lot of the fans are, do we really think him engaging with the fans more right now is a good idea?
I just don't think he's ever going to be that kind of coach.
No, and I don't either. But
this is not what he's used to coaching on the European level, where if he walked down the street, probably at Crystal Palace after a bad game, he was probably people already threw stuff at him. So I mean, it's a different scenario here. I know there's not as much like outside pressure. I mean, this guy was the coach at Inter Milan. I mean, that is a pressure-packed situation right there. I just think that he has come to this and probably gotten like with the backlash from the fans. He probably didn't expect it. So again, we talked about this when he said the spoiled comments. I just don't think that he thought he did anything wrong. And I'm sure that when the team came up to him and said, hey, you need to kind of walk that one back, he was probably like, I do. He probably just didn't realize that he had done something.
Yeah. I'm not too worried about it. I'm not worried about him trying to engage with the fan base because I just don't think that's his personality. Let's talk about some positives. Miles Robinson is the center back of the future.
That guy, I mean, he got called up to the U23 U.S. squad, so good for him. And just some of the saves. I mean, that one where he tracked all the way back in front of the goal and cleared it off. I mean, that's something you should see on highlight reels for like plays of the year defensively. I mean, it was unreal. And he's a guy who it was weird because in that first season where we didn't really see a whole lot from him, people were like, that's the number 2 overall pick. I don't see anything from this guy. And this other guy, Julian Gressel, is playing some of the best soccer on the team. Took Miles a little longer, and I think with a defender, you got to grow into your body. You got to get a little more used to some things, and it might take a little longer for defenders to develop it, especially center backs, than a player like Julian Gressel. But he has come along so.
He might have always had. I mean, look, it's not like Tata Martino didn't have faith in him. He played him in important roles throughout the season last year. He might have been just a victim of the number of defensive players Atlanta United already had on the roster. I mean, let's go back through last year and really think about where Miles Robinson would fit, considering he's a center back in the lineup. You had Michael Parkhurst, LGP, Franco Escobar. That essentially made your back 3.
Yeah.
You're not, if you're going to make a sub, you're typically not making a sub at on the back line. So
unless there's an injury or
let's understand. And I think I asked Guzan about his development from what the difference has been from this year and last year, and I think that was the response, is that the opportunity now is there for him, is that he has the chance to make a name for himself, show that he belongs in the starting 11, the dedication at practice, that all that stuff, the typical stuff that you hear from a young kid that's growing into his role on the team. Now he's had the opportunity with the injury to Escobar. Who knows what happened? Not who knows. He's not. If he sits, given he's the best player Atlanta United has right now, absolutely reason to panic in regards to Frank de Boer. There's no way you should be sitting Miles Robinson. Absolutely. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with you. But again, we haven't seen that kind of play. I mean, last year the knock was that he wasn't great with the ball at his feet. He was a great defensive player, but just wasn't great with the ball at his feet. This year has been 100, completely different.
Oh yeah, just in every aspect of his game.
He's 100% as young as he is as polished as I think he can possibly be right now. I think he's only going to get better. I think you're going to see him, assuming he continues to progress. You're going to see him as a regular name on the U.S. men's national team. I think he should be. He's absolutely killed it this year so far.
I think
I think he's the unanimous. I don't think there's another player that you can put in front of him. He's the unanimous best player.
It's not
2 months into the season, whatever
close.
It is.
It's not close. He's team MVP for sure, and I would also
good for him.
Yeah, good for him. A and B. If Frank de Boer, I talked about player development earlier. I would like to think that if Frank de Boer is good at developing any kind of player, it's center back, because that's what he played. So I don't know if any of it is because of Frank de Boer, but Frank de Boer, I would assume, is going to take a lot of credit for it. At least because that's the best.
No, but I think people are smarter than that. I think everyone understands that in the little time that he's spent in this new system under this new coach, that he's had this talent up until this past year. It's just now he has the opportunity to put it on the stage and everyone can see what he's got, and he's performing magnificently.
Oh yeah,
it sucks that Atlanta, the team and the fans have had to depend on him so much. You hope not to see that moving forward. You hope that Miles Robinson isn't being named your best player at the moment.
Well, but I mean, a lot of his good play has come into time when LGP hasn't really been that great.
I think he's been fine.
I'm not saying he's been bad. I just don't think he hasn't been. There have been moments. There's been ups and downs, and I'd say if Miles Robinson hadn't been playing as good as he had, it'd be way worse.
I'll attribute to LGP. I'll attribute Parkhurst. I'll attribute to anyone else that looks tired to actually being tired, running on fumes for the most part. Remedi even. I'll attribute. Again, I think we can assess this a little more fully after a couple after a couple breaks, after a couple. Now that CCL's over, we can focus on MLS. U.S. Open Cup, I don't even care about it anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, look, in terms of the U.S. Open Cup, after what just happened with CCL, if you run out Atlanta United 2 for your U.S. Open Cup games, I'm totally fine with that.
We'll see how that. We should look.
Eric makes a mean keeper. Put Eric in a keeper for the U.S. Open Cup.
You don't want that. I'll totally take it, but you don't want that. All right. Anything else you want to go over before? Any questions on the YouTube stream before we take off?
So it's funny. Andrew says, he doesn't care about Frank de Boer's engagement. He just wants to see passion. To which, I replied, dude, he's Dutch. You ain't getting super rah. I mean, if you've seen, look at all the really successful Dutch managers over the years. Do you remember one of them getting Marco van Basten?
I mean, I've seen him get a little hyped on goals being scored.
A little bit.
He's full pump and iron, all that stuff.
Baston?
No, I'm talking about Frank de Boer.
Yeah. I'm just saying, you look at like Ruud Gullit, Frank Rijkaard, Louis van Gaal, Goose Hiddink, just all these managers. Martin Jol. None of them are jump out of the punch the air with celebration. They're all very methodical, very pragmatic, very serious people, and. That's just kind of, I'm not trying to give you a sociology lesson here, but that's just kind of how they are.
There's look, let's be real. There's not been a lot to be passionate about when it comes to this team. They haven't really,
very true.
Yeah, they haven't really dominated play so far in most matches this year. So let's be real.
Are you ready for the easiest question you've been asked all night?
Do it.
This comes to us from Elliot. Should Miles replace Parkhurst as a starter with Escobar coming back? Yes.
It just depends on how good Escobar looks coming back. Let's keep that in mind. That it's not like Escobar's a sure thing coming back.
If Escobar comes back and looks about how we think he should look, then yeah, Parkhurst is not playing well enough to stay in that lineup right now. If it comes down to Miles or Parkhurst.
Again, I would caution everyone. And look, I'm not disagreeing. I think right now, yeah, sure, given the situation, but just realize that these players are tired. this break comes at a perfect time for them to recharge their batteries, get a nice break in, and you don't know what you're going to see coming out of this international break out of Michael Parkhurst. You don't know what you're going to see out of Franco Escobar. You don't know what you're going to see out of LGP, Rametti, who probably desperately needs it more than anyone else.
When does the next window open up? July?
Oh, that I don't know. I think so.
You ready to see some combination play between Tito and Zlatan when he gets
No.
sold again?
What? No. Tito's not getting sold. Tito absolutely has a place in this team.
I'm just kidding. Somebody put sold in the comment.
Here's the thing.
It might not even be about him having a place in the team, though. If he's not getting the playing time he wants, he may want to go.
That's ultimately still the club's decision, and the club is not going to let him go.
Well, the club is, they've been nice. They've been letting some other players go.
Not again. You spent money. Well, you didn't spend that much money on him, but I don't even think he spent it. He came on a free, didn't he? Yeah. He's a talent that you're gonna.
I agree. I don't think he sell him, but I mean, he may be. What if he becomes a locker room problem?
I don't think he would. I think you have. If we're talking about locker room problems, we're talking about a
this is all hypothetical. Different. I don't think
we're talking about different kind of problems, and those problems stem from this system ultimately not working. I don't think it's going to be because Tito's unhappy he's not playing. Tito is
already made the comment.
Tito is the player he is. I don't think he's an automatic starter on any other team in MLS. I think he's a little too one-dimensional. He can pull a rabbit out of his hat sometimes, and he makes it look great. But I think what he depends on game in and game out, it's not enough to be an automatic starter. Sure, if there's an injury and he's the next guy up, yeah, then obviously you start him. But he absolutely has a role in this team.
That one he had on the sideline this week, it was nice, although it was one of those, like you said, where he just kind of pokes the ball around and then runs around.
Yeah, that's his game. There's nothing. I'm not hating on that. But that's his bag of tricks.
But you know how you at one point said last year is Miguel Almiron the easiest player to defend in MLS.
I said he was one of the.
I think you were asking the question.
One of the more predictable players.
Is he more easy to defend?
Because you saw him running down. I mean, no, it doesn't make it easier. It's just
what I meant.
You know what he's going to do. Yeah,
and I think that's the same thing with Tito. To a much, obviously, they're not the same player.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know what Tito is going to try to do. He's not. I know, like we said, he had some techers, but most of them are him just putting the ball past you and then just using his speed to get around.
Yeah, he certainly had his moments last year, and I hope he has those moments again. I just don't know that that's something you can specifically rely on game in and game out.
Elliot says, sell him to a European team, not MLS. What European team wants Tito Vichao now? I mean, you might could sell him to like Salisbury United of like League 4.
All right. Anything else on the chat? All right, we will have Josh has promised us a very nice Talking Tactics sometime this weekend, going into next week. We've got a big break, so obviously a lot of time to dive into that. Make sure
next week maybe talking some of these. I guess we don't really have a whole lot of U.S. in terms of Atlanta United other than Miles with the U23.
Liga MX didn't necessarily want him. It was just a rumor that they might be interested in him. Don't get those things mixed up. Interest and wanting is two different things.
Some of Tito.
Yeah, sorry, it came up on the chat. Yeah. So I'm addressing that specific person.
Or a Turkish team. Maybe a Turkish team will want him.
Anyways, make sure you're following the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, especially for Talking Tactics. That's exactly where that thing gets dropped. If you want to donate to the podcast, patreon.com/MOTS podcast goes a long way for us. Any kind of donations you want, you can give as little or as much as you want. All goes back into the podcast, and we certainly appreciate it. Follow me at Eric G. Quintana. Sam, we're going to follow you.
At Sam J. Franco on Twitter, and Andrew with the I appreciate the podcast. Listen every week. Great job. Be like Andrew, guys.
Andrew's awesome.
Be like Andrew. And, just looking forward to more great content. I know I've been this is my first time back on the actual podcast. I feel like in like a month because I've been out with some of the UGA midweek basketball games. But basketball season's over, so I'm back for the long haul here. Looking forward to really just seeing if this team can, slowly but surely make the improvements, because this isn't going to be a snap your fingers overnight, kind of fix type thing. This is going to be something where, either in 5 months from now, we're all going to be even more mad than we are right now, or we're going to be like, man, this Frank DeBoer system's really blossomed into something special. Because I don't think there's really a middle ground here. I think the players on this team are too good to kind of be a middle ground type team. Either the system's just going to implode and it's not going to be good, or they're going to figure it out. And I hope for one that it's the latter there.
Again, at MOTS Podcast, you can follow Josh at JoshB914. I hope I hit everything. Follow Dirty South Soccer at Dirty South Sock on Twitter. Make sure you're following them for all the Atlanta United content you can possibly think of. And if you made it this far into the podcast, send us a little squid emoji. That would be great.
Yeah, somebody's already put a little squid on the YouTube comments here. We appreciate that.
Yep. All right. Until next time. See you later, Atlanta.
Bye. Doobie doobie doo.